And you're welcome to the Voters Diary. My name is Vivian Kai Lokko. Thank you for making time to join us again for another edition of the Voters Diary. Last week we were looking at health, the week before roads. Today we're moving to industry. How well have we performed as a country in terms of industry, and what will be the impact of that on the future, and as well as for the elections for you? You can join the conversation. Always send us a message. Make sure you add Voters Diary hashtag via Facebook or Twitter, or you can send us a message on the phone lines currently being displayed on your TV set. When I come back, I'll introduce to you the gentleman I'll be having today's conversation with, and then we'll take it from there. Don't go away. And you're welcome back to the Voters Diary. My name is Vivian Kai Lokko. Today, I'm here with two gentlemen. I'm here with Godfred, Akoto, Boafo. He heads our current affairs division.
This is your regular team. This is like your regular team, you know.
And you guys abandoned. Wait, let me introduce the other one, then I'll attack the two of you. I'm also here with Kojo, Akoto Boateng. He's the head of new media here at City FM and City TV. So, Kojo, welcome. Godfred, welcome. Where were you guys last week?
We were here.
We were here. You know,
where were you on Thursday?
You know, sometimes you realign your resources, so it affects us.
As for you, I don't want to talk about you because at least Kojo tried. He only, I think Friday or Thursday. Yeah. But you...
I was on radio. You know, you sent me to radio. So I delivered for you on radio as a sign.
What is that? Good to see you guys. Welcome. I hope your weekend was good.
Yes, good. Always a pleasure. Good to see you too.
Great.
Looking lovely as always.
Thank you. You guys look well. Money is coming, so just remember to channel it my way. But guys, this week we are looking at industrialization. A very, mouthful word. Whether it's been a big one in our country, we'll be looking at that this week, right? But I want us to start from the top. The man who is, believed to have started this thing on a very good note, did a lot of things we're seeing today on the back of many of the developments we've seen. So I think it's right that we start with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and look at, the plans he had for the country, what he was able to do, and then trickle all the way through to what we're seeing today with the manifestoes from both sides and all that. So if you guys agree, we start with Kwame Nkrumah, right?
We might even go beyond him.
Okay. You want us to do the colonial before we come to Kwame Nkrumah?
Because there are linkages.
So for the perspective and all that. Okay.
We won't dwell on too much there, but
please, let's dwell on our own.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, so guys, welcome again. Let's quickly jump in. So this Nkrumah plan that he had after we regained independence, we can talk a bit about what the powers that be at the time started and how he came in and what plan he had for us, and then we'll look at the particular things as we go.
Well, I think that I want to start the conversation from the perspectives of countries and the need to industrialize in the first place, or their state polities, and why at a point in time every state feels that there is a need to come together, have a plan that incorporates all facets of economic development and planning, give a timeline to it, append expenditure to it, and see it through a certain time frame to be able to move a country from point A to point B. So if you look out throughout history, we've had different facets of industrialization across history and civilization. And so a point comes in every polity's entity and every polity's time where this thing needs to be done. And so for one like ours, yes, it's always fair to state, like you said, Nkrumah's 7-year development plan, 63 to 70. But it's also interesting to know that if you look at what constitutes an economic plan or an industrialization plan, it's just fair to go back to 1919 and talk about Gudgesberg.
Okay, so you are insisting on.
I'm not insisting. I'm just telling you what.
You've told us why it's important to have the plan.
It's important that we pay attention to that, because at the time it was considered to be the first of its kind for a colonial power to try and give that kind of direction to its governed entity. So, one, it was comprehensive, whether we like it or not.
Okay.
It covered all sectors of the Ghanaian economy, covered agri, it covered industry, covered public sector, educational sector. And you see, the reason why I said it's important is because even though we can later discuss the motives, and it's the same way we will discuss Nkrumah's motives, that industrial plan built the Takoradi to Kumasi railway line, which was very important. That built the Takoradi Harbour, built Kolebu Cocoa Research Center at Tafo, if I'm not mistaken, built a lot of inter-trunk urban roads as well.
Comes back to your question of motive.
Yeah,
what you were saying.
Yeah, we'll get
with
that.
The ones they did.
Of course, but the point is, it was the foundation upon which we were able to move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so it will be quite strange to ignore that. But based on that, we can then jump to what Kwame Nkrumah decided to do with his when he came with his development agenda, the 7-year development plan. And Kojo, if you can also butt in at this point so that we can split this.
Yeah, so after that, then we'll look at the agenda for the colonial guys. Then we come back. Kojo, your initial remark.
If you look at what Godfred is saying, the colonial administrators then wanted to open up the country to the natural resource-rich areas. Okay, now the idea of their industrialization is to be able to move raw material from the natural resource-rich areas to the ports for exports into their country. Yeah. So even though they had a sense or something that looked like industrialization, it wasn't entrenched in adding value completely in Ghana to benefit the local economy.
It was more for their gain, right?
Yes. So for example, if you look at the cocoa industry and you look at the value chain, that has been a trend for years, even in modern times. So open up the country so that we can easily get to the resources, take the resources to the Takoradi ports, put them on ships and take away. And bring finished products which you sell at exorbitant prices to the people of the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Your country makes more money. The protectorate or your colony feeds the industrial development of your country. Mind you, around those times too, Britain was also in the industrialization stage and it needed a lot of raw material to drive. So timber, gold, all the various raw materials that we had here. So the wisest thing for any colonial administrator to do then, and if you read a lot of the reports, the very old reports and some of the old newspapers, Gold Coast was a profitable venture for the British because they were getting a lot of things. And the government then had to ensure there is a rail line which will go to the heart of the raw material areas to bring them. Now, if you fast forward it to what Nkrumah tried to do, for example, 4 of the key drivers, the 4 principal objectives of his industrialization drive. Point number 2, the colonial structure of production based on exports of primary commodities, which largely accounts for the present low level of income, must be completely altered. So they wanted to alter that such that with time we will have a lot of value addition here, which will raise incomes, which will create wealth for the Ghanaian, and which will solve our basic needs as a country. So even though there was something that looked like industrialization, its primary focus wasn't to enrich Ghana, but to enrich the parent country of the colonial administrators, which they did by opening up the country with the ports, with rail lines, with some roads, so that they could just go and fetch the raw material at very low prices and take it to wherever they will take it, add value, and sell it to enrich their nations. So if you look at then and fast forward to Nkrumah, that was the main difference. Take the raw material away, and Nkrumah said, let's add value here. and let's do import substitution.
Yeah. Okay. So, now that you've all given your initial remarks, I think now we can start the discussion. Back to Nkrumah. So,
yeah, and in doing so, we have to go to the forward of the document, just so that people understand what he was trying to do and why it became so important. And again, if you recall the conversation we had on manifestoes, I spoke about the CPP manifesto of 1951. Now, that particular manifesto was titled Towards the Goal. And under economics, Nkrumah did this. This is what he said he was going to do, or the CPP. A 5-year economic plan. Immediate materialization of the Volta hydroelectric scheme. Railway lines to be doubled and extended. Roads to be modernized and extended. Canals to join rivers. Progressive mechanization of agric. Special attention will be given to swollen shoe disease, blah, blah, blah. Industrialization will be carried out with all energy. This was the wording of the manifesto.
For that manifesto.
Industrialization will be carried out with all energy. And this was in 1951. So we went through those phases. Ghana got independence. The country, basically, the economic structure of the country did not change in the first 4 years, basically. At that point, Nkrumah allowed local industry and export industry to coexist, just to try and compete. But he had a bigger plan, and that plan is what he set forth in his 7-year development plan, which was basically a very aggressive form of trying to pull the country from point A to point B. So if you go to the forward of the document, he basically says that the 7-year development plan, which is now published, embodies the proposals in the party's program of work and happiness adopted at the party congress in July 1962. The plan provides the blueprint for the future progress and development of Ghana as a nation. I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of problem with my tooth. Kojo,
okay, so Kojo, come get some water.
Yes, so he writes about work and happiness. That's the foreword that was written and signed by Osajifo.
Yes,
he says that the 7-year development plan, which is now published, embodies the proposals in the party's program of work and happiness adopted at the party congress in July 1962 and accepted by the country. Vivian, I don't know whether I remember this song. Work and happiness, I will do my best. Da, 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 for beautiful Ghana. Yes. So I don't know whether that was Ramblers or E.T. Mensah. So in fact, there was actually a song to push that message across. And the underlying thing was for Ghana to own our economy, for Ghana to be less dependent on imports, for Ghana to add value, and to create an opportunity for all Ghanaians. So if you read the conclusion of what he wrote that the plan has been prepared by the National Planning Commission under my chairmanship.
National Planning Commission?
Yes, under my chairmanship. And you'll later find names like J.H. Mensah and all these people playing a role in this. And he says that if we all work hard and conscientiously at our tasks under this plan, we can look forward with a hope to a new Ghana where the opportunities for work and happiness will be matched by the abundant fruits of labor for all. This was the president then addressing the country. So a lot of things were done and a lot of planning was done. For example, there were different committees, and those committees could bring on as many experts as they deemed fit to help them propose solutions. They brought in some external experts, but they had a lot of locals contributing to this. So we cut across all the various angles of national development and industrialization. In education, there was a plan. Healthcare delivery, there was a plan. Infrastructure, there was a plan. Industrialization, there was a plan. There was a plan for everything. And
so very comprehensive and detailed. Over what period? Because, of course, in his manifesto, he had a 5-year plan. He comes in with a 7-year plan, a big, crazy plan. How long did it take him to do all these things, with all the detail and everything?
That's what I'm saying, that if you look at the time that he came in, based on the manifesto that he brought in, up until that point, you are looking at basically a 12-year phase where he was able to reach this point, where he decided that this is what we wanted to do. And Vivian, it wasn't easy to do. And it was unique in the sense that, and I'll give you a few details later, there were a lot of constraints to go through for Nkrumah to get to this point. Because like Kojo explained in his introduction, the nature of the economy was not something that was going to allow you to undertake this. You needed money to do this, first of all. The New York Times at that point, when they reported this, estimated that this was going to cost Ghana $2.5 billion.
At the time?
At the time. You are the business expert. You can count the money.
$2 billion now, fast forward. At the time?
Yes, his 7-year plan was going to cost, and his plan for it was that a bit under half of the money was going to be sourced locally. The rest had to come from FDI. Now, if you would recall, I also told you that the nature of the economy at the time, he had engineered a system which was quite competitive. So he hadn't gone all out to say he was localizing or nationalizing all existing industry that was in there for this.
So over a period.
Over a period. But there were a few constraints in the build-up to this. There was manpower constraints. The know-how wasn't there. Okay. The second one, and I think we still see a lot of that in our politics, was the trust issue. Now, how are we going to do this? Were we going to do this Western style, capitalist style, or we're going to do the socialist style? Now, everybody knew Nkrumah's ideology and his leanings. And so he said, we're going to do this socialist style. But the problem here was this. Nkrumah also feared the emergence of strong indigenous capitalists. And I recall a quote, I'll find it for you. He told Kojo Bosio once that...
Because of his socialist background?
Basically, he did not feel the need to open this up to local capital. And I'm going to explain to you why. So he told Kojo Bosio, who was one of his big cabinet ministers, that any Ghanaian with a lot of money has a lot of influence. Any Ghanaian with a lot of influence is a threat to me.
Okay, so he preferred to have foreign capital, big capital, because they couldn't overthrow him or get rid of him.
It was safer to coexist with foreign capital. They didn't have local roots at the time, and whose capacity to buy local influence, so he thought at the time, because history would later show that that was a mistake.
Yeah, because that came back to Hunter, and it's still hunting us, isn't it?
Exactly. So those were some of the thoughts, those were some of the things that...
That's interesting, actually.
Were hindering the movement of this particular 7-year development plan and how he was going to get it off to begin with. But eventually, we all know that at the heart of this was the Volta River project, which basically created the environment, because around it was going to be built the hydroelectric dam, which was going to cost a lot of money.
We'll come back to some of the big things, ones that he was able to execute, ones that are still in the system, and ones that he probably started and couldn't finish, and ones that he was not able to start at all. So I think since you started mentioning some of the projects, you can come in now.
Yes, he was talking about capital. Let me quote something in the foreword. He says that Ghana's economy, particularly at the present stage, has room for all the investment capital, which is likely to be provided by foreign investors, by the central and local government, and by individual Ghanaians. In this respect, I believe that there are a considerable number of individual Ghanaians who are in a position materially to assist in finding the necessary capital for the 7-year development plan.
Okay.
Then he goes on to say that in colonial days, it was natural that profits made in Ghana should be invested abroad. But then they wanted to turn that around. And to send a message to investors, he said that today the situation is different. An investor who lays out his money wisely in Ghana is likely to make a larger profit than if he invested it in another country. Then he talked about the exchange control laws and other things that they will put in place as checks and balances. In fact, later when we explore how projects were done or how they wanted to do projects, there was a conscious effort in this document to ensure that local contractors got a lot of the work to do, and also to ensure that bribery and corruption is eliminated.
So the labor side, he wanted the Ghanaians in the labor side.
They wanted us to build Ghana practically by Ghanaians for Ghanaians, and later for Africa. As we go along, you know that the African Union or the unity of Africa was also one of the key things he was looking at as we try to develop Ghana.
Okay.
To be ready to catalyze the growth of African economies and also get Africa to unite. You know, Nkrumah was heavy about the African unity.
The African unity.
All those things were underlying factors. But a key thing that we can point out too is that there was a lot of connectivity. Plans were not in silos. For example, if he says we are going to build a technical school, there's a training college training teachers for the technical schools, and they know that in 4 years, these teachers would have graduated. So planning for new schools was in line with actions like this. The Volta River project, the Italian contractors managed to speed it up a bit and save us about a year. So planning for industry was also aligned to that, so that the Valco project will be aligned to this, so that the development of towns will be aligned to that. In fact, when you talk about affordable housing, you see how these days we import almost all our building materials into the country. There was a plan to have a prefab concrete industry where housing units will be prefabricated in bulk, which will make it cheaper, where our villages and small towns would also have decent accommodation and would not be anything different from their social and communal structure. So a lot of thought had gone into this. So we need houses, let's train people, let's set up industry, let's provide power for industry. Let's connect the industry to the communities that will be benefiting from this service. So there was a lot of interconnectivity, not some of the things that we are seeing these days where we plan projects in silos that sometimes do not connect to other projects. So in the end, you have to spend on this project, spend on that project, and spend on that project, and waste resources when you could have connected these meaningfully to give proper returns to the Ghanaian.
Okay. So
just also to add to this end, the process of Nkrumah getting where he wanted, you know, in chasing money to get this off the road, he struggled a bit to convince people to come and put their money.
So the money bit, one of the key challenges.
Yes, and that is why you spoke about how come it took so long from this point to. But by 63, because of the ideology, he had 6 countries who shared that same kind of ideology come in and say, we are going to help you. And then also significantly, he had some buy-in from the Volta River project, where the Americans came in, the Brits came in, and the Italians were going to build it. So he got some really good terms for this. Again, you are the business person here. So for the equipment of factories, for instance, he got money 2.5% to 3% interest with up to 12 years in which to repay the loans.
Okay.
So,
and this loan was from who?
This loan was coming from 6 countries, 6 communist countries who were going to help with this particular process. And that is the point where he reached and said, okay, finally we can do this. Coincidentally, at the same time as well, the Americans came in, the Brits came in via the World Bank and said, look, we're going to give you the money. We're going to build this Volta River project that you're speaking about. We're going to build the dam. We're going to build the smelter for Valco and all those things, because the plan made sense in the sense that.
But what were they? What was he offering them in return for the cash they wanted? Of course, it was a loan, but you know, what was he offering them for all of a sudden 6 communist countries coming in? The Brits,
that point,
the Americans, everybody rushing in at the time.
Geopolitics at that time allowed for countries to quickly choose a side. If you didn't pick one, somebody would pick. It was the East versus the West.
Okay.
So either the East came in or the West would come in. But, like I said, Nkrumah at that point also did not want to alienate foreign direct investment. He knew that this ambitious drive that he was on, irrespective of his political ideology, would not grow without Western investment.
Okay.
So he did not want to, that's why I said he allowed for the early stages of his government, there was competition. You had the foreign companies operating, you had the local companies operating. Because if he had come in and immediately nationalized, which investor was going to come and put money into? You are the same person. You are busy closing down businesses down there. You are here asking us for money. It wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work.
So he faced money challenges. He managed to get some capital in.
That he was able to solve.
What other challenges did he have to deal with before executing this ambitious plan?
Well, before we even get into the challenges, maybe we want to look at the objectives of his plan. Then it will give us a better idea of how things went. So when it comes to, and now I'm just going to stick to the industrial development part, because that was one of the key catalysts of our growth then. Now, the 5 important economic objectives of industrial development was A, to the largest degree possible, domestic substitutes should be produced for those manufactured staples of consumer demand for whose supply Ghana is now entirely dependent upon foreign sources and expends large sums in foreign exchange each year. So this was objective number 1. Okay. So consumer goods, we should just produce them here so that we stop the imports and the large foreign exchange bill it puts on us. Now B, the agric and mining commodities that are at present exported mostly as unprocessed primary products should be progressively processed and manufactured before export. Now C, the building materials industry should be expanded and modernized to enable it to support the inevitable increased activity in construction, and a start should be made on the development of other basic industries in the field of metals and chemicals. D, in the development of basic industries, particular attention should be paid to preparing the economy for the further stages of industrialization envisaged under subsequent plans. A beginning should therefore be made in a small way in the field of machine industries, electrical equipment, and electronics. And E, industries will be developed in such a way that they fit in with the development in other African countries. Now, you asked about some of the challenges that he had to face with his development plan. One of the key ones, if you really do the analysis, was human resource and knowledge base and skills. So, for example, if you go to the then KNUST, which was the then University of Science and Technology, right? They had to break some of the faculties, and they had plans to form new faculties that would teach students even everyday stuff like all these ceramic products that we import into the country. So they're going to have courses on ceramics, in glassware, in almost all the key things.
Preparation for the industries he wanted to build.
Immediately we didn't have the human resource. But immediately plans were put in place to ensure that in the not so distant future, we would have all the human resources, at least the bulk of them, to get things started. Now, the other one was also finance, because, mind you, there were a lot of trading companies that were importing all these things, and cabals that were importing all these things.
Like the rice and the sugar one, and you want to come and stop and come and produce it locally.
So you should have a way of dealing with these people. And it happens now. There are a lot of these institutions and groups that are frustrating our
and
current
at the
efforts.
same time, most of them were foreign-owned companies who you're trying to woo into your country.
And all locals who had partnerships with these people
them.
To do. So that was also a problem that he had to deal with.
Okay.
So I think the problem of dealing with the current system, which will affect him, because if these people rose against him and tried to do all sorts of things, and then the human resource capacity to deal with the needs that we had. Okay. But in all, there was a plan to put all those things in a proper place. Okay. Now, when he was overthrown, for example, some of the faculties that were set up, which had not been fully operationalized, had to be collapsed again for business as usual to continue. So those were some of the things that I think were some of the main challenges
that he had to face. Interestingly, these challenges still persist.
Yes.
Human resources, financing, and dealing with cartels and all that.
Just navigating your way through negotiations.
I know, right? So I'll take a quick break. When I come back, we'll look at how he was able to deal with those things, if he was able to do. But you can join the conversation. You can send us a message via Facebook or Twitter. Remember to add the hashtag Voters Diary, or you can send us a message via WhatsApp on the phone lines on your television set. I'll be right back. Don't go away.
day. I'm gonna make most of it. It's a beautiful day, a day to share with you. You make my world go round, yeah, yeah. It's really got me saying, NASCO brings home happiness.
NASCO, bring home happiness.
So you're welcome back to the Voters Diary. My name is Vivian Kai Lokko. I'm here with Godfred, Akoto, Boafo, as well as Kojo, Boateng. We're looking at industrialization for Ghana. We started with the colonial period, moved to Kwame Nkrumah, where we currently are. And guys, let's move to, at the time, you know, you guys were talking about him wanting to stop the status quo that he inherited of course, of the colonial guys, looking at their economies, how to build them. So a lot of exports from our side in terms of raw material, no value addition at the time, and then the imports to feed the nation and also make money for their country. So what were the big items we're seeing in these two divides?
They did something like a census, not like the regular census that we see, but they did a market survey of industry then in 1959. And if you check industry, mining, quarrying, and construction contributed 35% of the total value added in all industry. Okay. Now, when it comes to local production itself, the key fields were beverages, tobacco, and wood products.
I want to see what we have today, compare that thing, because some of the things you are saying are too familiar.
Yes. The key manufacturing industries, beverages, tobacco, and wood products.
Okay.
Okay. And he wanted us to have grain milling, bakeries, food manufacturing, textiles, and all those everyday use items, because we're importing a lot of them. And if you check the import figures, you'd understand why beyond the beverages, the tobacco industry, and wood, he wanted us to have more clothing industry here, a bigger footwear industry, soap and textiles, because in 1938, we're importing 0.18 million Ghanaian pounds then of clothing. By 1961, it had increased to 4.81 million.
From 1 to 4.
0.18, actually. 180,000 to 4.81. Footwear from 30,000 pounds to 2.7 million pounds from 1938 to 1961. Soap from 90,000 to 2.74 million pounds. Textiles from 1.3 million in 1938 to 21.5 million in 1961. Okay. So there were items that were importing a lot. Now, food, beverages, canned fish, tin fish, and all those things. We're importing all those things. And he felt that, no, we should be able to make these things here. So in his development plan, he invested a lot in production, which is agric. And if you look at the breakdown in agric investment, you would realize that as at then he was investing about 11 million pounds in irrigation, which was about the biggest standalone investment he was making into agric, because they understood that agric should be an all year round production to feed industry. So there was a lot that were importing, and he wanted us to stop that. And when it comes to the exports too, you would realize that they were raw, unfinished goods that we were exporting to be finished, to be sent back to us. And the framers of the plan, led by the chairman, who is Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, felt that shouldn't have been the case. So later, you'd realize that the industry that we invested in were industry that were making consumer goods. So the Bogatanga Beach factory would then ensure that we have tinned meats, packaged meats for the industry. Japan Textiles, Akosombo Textiles, and all those would ensure that we had textiles and fabric to meet our fashion needs. The Kumasi Shoe Factory would ensure that we would cut down our footwear import bill and produce shoes here. Vehicle assembly plants to ensure that we produce vehicles that were for our terrain, and later would improve upon the technology transfer and not just assemble vehicles here, but actually make vehicles here. TVs. Now let's look at this. If you look at Ghana's 32 million population, and the fact that a household in Ghana is about 4 people, okay, and you do the maths, at least most households have TVs, right? Where do we get the TVs from? We import all those TVs into the system. In fact, if you look at import figures of the things that we imported the most, cars in 2018, $466 million worth of cars into the country. And his plan was, let's agree to have a standard set of vehicle types into the country. Let's have assembly plants here. Let's have technology transfer. Let's have the KNUST and all these other institutions train engineers. Let's have the polytechnics and the technical schools train technicians who can fix these things. Let us produce the cars here. Now, if that success then had been sustained and improved upon, this $466 million worth of car imports into the country in 2018 would have been money that would have largely stayed here, because it will be paying Ghanaian technicians and Ghanaian engineers, it will be paying Ghanaian factory workers, and it will be paying Ghanaian mines who will be mining the key material we would use to make the cars. It will be paying Valco, because we'll be using aluminium and a lot of things.
So we'll keep all that money.
The connectivity
in the
is there, but we could not sustain that growth and move forward. The Tama shipyard and the dry dock, the plan was to produce ships in the country. Produce ships in the country and export ships. Now, look at the Japanese economy and the Korean economies. Vehicle production, ship production. He mentioned electronics. Back in 1960-something, he was talking about electronics. Now, look at the quantum of phones and electronic devices that we import into this country. So all those were things to ensure that we would train people, have the industry, cut down on the imports, make Ghanaians wealthier, and make Ghanaians also use quality products. But we fail to sustain those things.
And you know, just to continue from there, in implementing this, which is the key leg of this, Nkrumah took what one can say is a strategic economic decolonization at the point. Because basically what he did was, by setting up these entities and state handling companies, so you had something like GNTC, Ghana National Trade Corporation, you had GIHOC, Ghana Industrial Holding Company, which were the big bodies. And whilst increasing their power, he used strategic emasculation to reduce the capacity of the foreign competitors in the country. So, for instance, if you wanted to import anything into this country, you had to go to GNTC. That was the only way you could do that. And so, over a time frame, the control of the economy became more nationalized and more local. As to the disadvantages and advantages, we can discuss that later. But this particular form of economic decolonization that he undertook is what gave the power to the idea that he had. So, for instance, if you want to look at numbers, GNTC, which was issued all licenses for basic consumer commodities, like Kojo mentioned. So, if you wanted to do any form of business with consumer commodities like flour, sugar, rice, milk, canned fish, all the licenses went to GNTC, which was Ghana. So, if you look at this, by 65, for instance, the state importing enterprise controlled 35% of total commercial imports. State Insurance Corporation transacted about 50% of all insurance business. Commercial Bank accounted for 60% of total deposits. State-owned Black Star Line, again, Kojo mentioned that one, carried 17% of Ghana's seaborne commerce. GNCC, which is the Ghana National Construction Corporation, succeeded in displacing all the private contractors from the largest subsector of the time, which was building and construction. And that was financed by public funds. The state also owned factories, or this was done with partnerships between government and private interest. So you could see that in implementing this, Nkrumah had found ways of increasing the national stake. But the manpower constraints that we spoke about, it was a challenge through, and the nature of the economic decolonization as well, because we had enforced tariffs. All kinds of things were created that did not engender for a good business atmosphere, for a business environment to succeed in its own path, in its own time. So the implementation became a problem. But generally, in terms of implementing this, you could see great elements of success. And that is what allowed all these strategic areas to go. Now, also in implementation, one can look at location. I always complain about how the current manifestos do not seem to take location into account. Now, if you took and look at the mixed multiple indicator cluster surveys, it tells you which area in Ghana is the poorest, which area in Ghana needs the most jobs, requires which kinds of jobs. And yet when we are citing businesses, we don't cite businesses in those parts of the country. If we are citing a factory, we cite the factory in a place that might not require a factory necessarily. But if you look at Nkrumah's own, with what he tried to do, you could see a sense of strategy in that regard. I think Palugu, where's the meat? So why it made sense to have this there, where the rubber factory was.
Processing factory, Boga.
You understand?
Sugar factory, Akuse. Sugar factory, Commander.
Tomato.
Tema Steel Works. Shoe factory, Kumasi. Cocoa processing plant, Tema. Cocoa processing, Takrade. Glass factory in Takwa. Tomato and mango processing, Wenchi. Pineapple processing plant in Samwem. Tomato processing plant, Palugu. Food complex at Tema. Tobacco factory, Tema.
And that's because of shipping. And storage.
The Tema ones are shipping and storage.
Then refined solar salt factory, slaughterhouses across the country. And there's the Aveime tannery, there's the sleeping mats factory, there's the Kumasi shoe factory. Look, Vivian, let me share some statistic with you which will blow your mind. You see shoes that we wear, rubber shoes, including Chaliwate and all these plastic footwear you see on the market. In 2018, we imported $160 million worth of
$160 million
worth of rubber footwear. So Chaliwate, the ones they call Togo, some of the shoes that are made with rubber. And all these footwear.
In 2018,
$166 million worth of that into this country. Now, imagine we had the Kumasi Shoe Factory working and expanding.
Seriously.
Imagine we had invested in the Ghana Rubber Estates Limited, right? Which was one of the key things to also provide that resource for production and processing. This $166 million, which is providing jobs for people in China, Taiwan,
and
wherever.
doing a rubber slipper really is not a big thing. That you need to crack your head to manufacture.
Look at rice. Look at rice. There was a Korean group that came to undertake research in Ghana, and they said that of all the 10 regions then, we didn't have 16 regions then. The central region was the region least conducive for production of rice. Even that central region alone could produce enough rice to feed the whole country. Yes. But where are we now? We import so much rice into the country. The rice import bill on us, it's a whole lot of money. And we are not even importing the best quality rice for Ghanaians to eat to remain healthy. And this was a plan that would have invested largely in a lot of irrigation, so that your vegetable production will go on, your rice production will go on, every other thing you needed, so that we can eat Ghana Rice Krispies, not Kellogg's Rice Krispies. you get
I know what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
So it's something that we need to think about as a country. Where do we want to be in 2025? I was reading a certain document by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, right? And the Ministry of Trade and Industry did a strategic document between 2014 to 2016, medium-term development plan. And they wrote that the vision of the ministry is to establish Ghana as a major manufacturing, value-added financial and commercial hub in West Africa by the year 2025. We're in 2020. Do we think that by 2025, Ghana will be a major manufacturing hub?
Okay.
And if we are going to do that, what are the linkages and how strategic are we with investment to get us to do this?
Okay.
Yeah.
Godfred, I'll come to you in a bit.
Okay.
Let me clear these messages then. This one from Emmanuel from Takrady says, good afternoon. Fantastic submissions with all sincerity. If all our leaders who came after Dr. Kwame Nkrumah had gradually continued with all that he started, would have been better off than we are today. Sometimes it's quite pathetic and frustrating going through this history. May God have mercy on us. This one says, good afternoon, good work always from you guys. This one says, good afternoon, good work done. May God help motherland Ghana. Look as if we didn't set a national agenda development plan to be followed by all who matter. The party that comes into power will remain like this forever. This one says, Vivian, our leaders after Dr. Kwame Nkrumah have done little to build industries which seeks to have positive impact on the economy. This is from Samuel from Apam. Godfred.
Yeah, so but back to my point on the locations and the national impact of these things as compared to now. If you take a look at the location of industry now, you will realize that it's limited to 5 out of the 16 regions that we have. Okay, so the question then becomes, how do you bring everybody along? How does it benefit generally? But then again, back to Nkrumah and what he was trying to do, I like one thing in the sense that you could gauge the outcomes. A lot of times, you cannot gauge outcomes. But there are those who also tell you that, well, Nkrumah's methods during those periods are not methods that you can employ in a modern economy. There's, there will be divergent opinions on that. But if you look at what Nkrumah sought to do, for instance, so from a contribution of 90% to gross manufacturing output in 1962, state-owned enterprises produced 32% and 42% of gross manufacturing output in 66 and 67. This is within a 4-year period. Now, output in both the wholly state and state-private joint venture companies grew at rates of over 250% faster than the average for privately owned between the same period, so 62 and 66. Now, over the same period as well, there was a dwindling contribution from the predominantly non-Ghanaian privately owned enterprises to gross manufacturing output. Now, this significant decline in privately led manufacturing was a direct result of the government's strategy to take over the domain of many private enterprises. You understand? So, by just muscling in, they had managed to establish these things. Now, a lot of them went on to later fail. And like I said, we can look into how they went on to fail. It was a myriad of circumstances: bad economics, poor manpower, the resistance of subsequent governments to sticking with the plan, going back to the World Bank and finding all other methods to do this. But at that point, he seemed to have found a method that was working. But to be also fair, you have to look at the benefits and the costs of this particular industrialization agenda that he set. Yes, he put out all these things. They were brilliant. Most of them, in fact, if we had money to pay attention. But Kojo, can we say that all of them at that point were viable? Is that a point? So I look at it and make the point about being strategic with what you want to do. Okay, over a period of time, being realistic with your targets when it comes to political agenda setting. So you're saying that
some of the things really, it was going to fail anyway?
No, I'm not saying it was going to fail. I am simply saying that it was a matter of time placement. Within that time frame, there was too much happening and the economy was going to struggle.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point to make. Now, there are lots of people who have said that, Nkrumah did this, and the socialist ideology is something maybe we should go back to. But if you look at the global sphere right now, we're in an era of globalization where everything you do must also make commercial sense. Now the question is, can the government of Ghana catalyze industrial growth to make commercial sense, where the cost of production, the inputs, the quality, and the outputs will be competitive for Ghanaian industries to compete globally. For example, there was a matchmaking company which used to make matches in this country. They are no longer here. We import matches. Even tea roll. We have companies here that produce toilets or paper products, but we import a lot of that also into the country. So how do we help local industry become very competitive? Because we are in a commercial era. Nobody does business just for doing sake. As much as you want to do the business to impact the people and create opportunities for them, grow the economy, and sustain your country, you should also do it such that the business is viable. That's where we need to invest in a lot of research. Local-based research to meet our local needs, to ensure we meet local demand and also meet external demand. That's where we need to invest in a lot of production and value addition. Now, let me give you this example on businesses being enabled. Kwabene Jari Dankwa, he founded Metalex Ghana Limited. Before founding Metalex, he was into the retail business as a stockist for major roofing sheets. So he would buy roofing materials and come and sell. And then later, he saw an opportunity and founded Metalex to do production here. Dr. Michael Ajekum Ado, Kama, his business was to import medical products, medicines to sell. An opportunity came, he started local production. Palace Ghana Limited, Palace Biscuit, Delicious, is that not it?
Yeah, that's it.
Palace Biscuit.
Yeah.
They were also importing these things. And then they also started local production. Let me give you another example. Sickins, which is now amongst the biggest when it comes to the paint industry. What was his business? To import finished products. And then they started value addition. So once we look at the items we are importing, the question we should ask ourselves is, how do we get the import cabal? How do we get the wholesalers and all these people to channel their capital into local production such that it will make commercial sense to them to cut down on the imports? Can we put a plan in place such that if Vivian Kai Lokko and daughters and family and their business are importing 100,000 tons of rice, can we put in place a plan to aid Vivian's business to cut down on the imports gradually, say in the next 5 years, and invest in local production to give her the same commercial business she does, to make the business commercially viable? Those are some of the things that the state must be thinking about to put in place so that we drive industrialization and not antagonize the import cabal.
Okay. So what were some of the things he was able to establish and the ones that he failed at?
Oh, well, quite a lot. As for
I'm looking through the list of things he did. Oh my God, what a list! I mean, virtually everything we are running now, it was done by this man.
Things he established. Tema Motorway. Why am I mentioning this? Because it was linking Tema to Accra. It was linking production to consumption. You understand? Tema Harbour. It was also going to help us export if our production and our industrialization was done right to export. But now it's helping us to import. Now, Akosombo Dam, why? To provide power for industrialization. And Akosombo Township came along. Now, housing estates and all that. Now, building setting up the Building and Road Research Institute. Remember I mentioned housing, how we're going to have industrial housing units to do prefabricated housing materials. Now, on agric, plant genetic resources, forestry, all these fed into key industries because research to create products to be produced by industry adds value, value is transferred to the consumer, we eat, everybody makes money. Now, for the manufacturing companies, Glass Manufacturing Corporation, Aboso Glass Factory, and I told you at KNUST or UST then, they were going to have a glass course, glassware course to feed this industry. Ghana Cement Works, Tema, government electronics industry, cocoa processing. You know, the electronics industry, if it had worked, we would be having Ghana phones. Companies like Samsung and Nokia, even they didn't start as phone manufacturers. They started selling sugar and flour. And they metamorphosed into these things. But now we are importing all these phones. And so there was the cocoa processing factories in Takrady and Tema, Ghana Textile Corporation, Ghana Match Factory in Kade, Akasanoma Radio Factory, Tema, Gold Processing Factory, Takrady, Pomazi Poultry Farm, Winneba, Ghana Cement Factory, Takrady, Ghana Household Industries, Ifyekuma, Takrady, Ghana Jute Factory, Kumasi, Tema Food Complex, Amrahia and Avetime Dairy Farm. They had 6 rattan factories, 2 fiber factories, television assembling plant in Tema, Tema Steel Company, Bonsa Tie Factory, Ghana Glass Factory in Takwa, Gihok Pharmaceuticals, Achimota, Gihok Distilleries, Accra, the Gihok Footwear Factory, which is the Kumasi Shoe Factory. So many different things. There is the Zuarongo Meat Factory, Polugu Tomato Factory, Bogatanga Rice Mills, Bogatanga Meat Processing, Insawan Fruit Cannery, Ghana Rubber Estates, Tomato and Mango Cannery, Wenchi, Commander Sugar Factory, it's still there at Commander, Eswichari Sugar Factory, Tema Textiles, Ghana Textiles Manufacturing Corporation, so many, GTP in Tema, Akosombo Textiles, in Akosombo Japan Textiles, Tema Shipyard and Dry Dock, Tema Oil Refinery, State Fishing Corporation, Volta Aluminium, lots and lots of them, including banks, the NIB, the GCB, Agric Bank, all those were established then. ECG, Ghana Publishing, all those were industries that were set up to meet our needs back then.
You know, and quickly, just to a few seconds, just to talk about the protectionist attitude that Nkrumah had. You know, in 2012 or 13, the Kumasi Shoe Factory that he mentioned, which is partly owned by the Ghana Armed Forces, received investment to try and put it back on track. Ask the Ghana Armed Forces who's buying shoes from there. Ask them where they buy shoes from. Ask the state.
Ask them.
Where are you buying your shoes from?
We all know the answer. We have to leave it at that. Tomorrow, continue this conversation and then start on the manifestos of the 2 major political parties. But we'll wrap up with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's plan, 70-year development plan, when he assumed power. But thank you very much for joining us today. I did this with Godfred Akoto Boafo as well as Kojo Akoto Boateng. My name is Vivian Kai Lokko. Thank you so much. The repeat of the show is at 10 p.m. tonight. Make a date.